Fancy using a hunting app? In this film, we look at the two market leaders, Huntstand from the USA and MyHunt, called MyFieldsports in the UK, which has a more Germanic heritage. I talk to the people behind the apps and to a British hunting app user. Plus, I will give you my take on which one works best. Here they are side by side on my Google Pixel phone. First of all, they both take a little getting used to. They are feature rich and they both work smoothly. But you should devote an hour to each of them in the comfort of your home, perhaps with a glass of whiskey, finding your way around, putting in some details of pretend hunts so that when you're out in the field, you can work your app easily. You will notice that the European one is a bit German and the US one is very American, and we will come back to that functionality later. First, here is a British Huntstand user who says it's great. It is Love Island's Ollie Williams.
Well, I started using Huntstand about 6 weeks ago now, and it's fantastic. You can map out all your ground, privately on your own app. You can map out all your ground where you've got, whether it be in Scotland or Cornwall. It doesn't make a difference. And then once you've mapped out your board, it tells you how much acreage you've got. It's quite simple, mapping really. But then it goes into, you can drop pins of where your high seats are, where your camera traps are. So if you're serious stalker, or you're looking for a real advantage or something, basically to work out where your deer are, it's perfect. And then on top of camera traps, you can also add footage from those camera traps, so you can drag and drop footage of those camera traps or these camera traps, and then it's quite straightforward. Then once you've got your animals you've shot, you can then drop in your pins of where your animals are. There's two different modes. There's the pro mode, which I think is £4 a month or something, and then there's the regular mode, and frankly I use the regular mode. They give you a free trial for a week, but which automatically obviously stops, but it's great. It's just a simple mapping tool, which means you can drag and drop. It gives you, when you have your animals that's been taken or harvested, gives you an option of deer, buck or doe. It's American app, so buck and doe are the only two things you can actually put. You can't put stag, I don't think. But it gives you a vague idea, and then you can write notes about that animal. You can also do your pigeons and stuff as well, with vermin, rabbits, foxes, coyotes, whatever the Americans call them.
That's the bit I find grating about both apps. MyHunt has rejigged its app as MyFieldsports, so it represents the UK situation better, but both of them should make country-specific versions because people hunt, shoot different wildlife in different ways in almost every different country. Here's Tristan Breyer from the team behind MyFieldsports, which also produced the promo pictures showing now.
The parent company is Hunter & Co. We were founded back in 2018 by a very keen Swiss shot who comes from a very well-known Swiss family that specializes in the automobile industry throughout Europe. And basically our founder had the idea in 2018. He was sitting in a high seat looking around for something to help him manage both his area, his shoot, and his stalking activities, and couldn't really find anything which was really suitable. And it also was very usable, just in terms of mapping, organization, and also all the follow-up activities, because that's basically the general concept behind this: to take an activity like shooting and stalking or hunting over here, and to digitalize the whole process. I mean, in general, the field sports industry and the countryside and rural market in general has been very slow to catch up in the whole digitalization process. And so, as he couldn't really find anything suitable, he decided to make it himself. Obviously, as the automobile company was more specialized in that area, he was put in touch with a well-known German startup industry expert, and they together founded this company after a lot of market research. And since then, especially due to a lot of user feedback and a lot of input and partnerships with hunting and shooting organizations throughout Europe, we kept on developing and kept on adding features. At the moment, we're releasing new features about every 2 weeks. Usually based on user feedback and what people actually want and need, and especially because we're active worldwide currently, it takes a lot of local and regional adaptation, and so we rebranded to MyFieldsports in the UK back in October last year, and which has since done very well, and continue to try and adapt more to the UK style of shooting and stalking, which is slightly different from the continental way, but to in effect have the entire process from the planning before you organize a shoot, from the invitations to the management of all the installations on an area, and all the pens, all the high seats, all the possible points of interest, to the actual live shooting during a shoot, where you are able to follow and see live on the map where the other guns are, where the beaches are, which is a huge added safety aspect as well, which is hugely important. To then the follow-up activities afterwards, to the report and the activities of the day, and which are added into your shooting diary for the season.
Josh Dulker in Minnesota is the man behind Huntstand. As this promo video shows, his app was originally conceived for whitetail, and whitetail hunting is one of his passions.
The inception of Huntstand really did come from whitetail hunting. That is our bread and butter. Whitetail hunting dominates all other categories of hunting in North America. And I mean, really, even internationally across the world, I don't think anything has more hunters than the whitetail deer. So that is really what compelled us to build the app and primarily service outdoorsmen or whitetail hunters. But it also works really well for any other big game species, and turkeys, waterfowl, and even to an extent upland birds. At its core, Huntstand is it's a mapping app. So it allows you to save any of your points of interest, so your hunting locations, maybe parking spots, game observations, and any types of information or evidence that you find out in the field while you're scouting. You can log all that in Huntstand and save all those locations. And it starts to help you put together the puzzle of kind of what these animals are doing, and you can build patterns. And then with the other features of the app, like the weather conditions and the wind map and a lot of those types of things, those are the features that you use when it's time to actually strike. And so you can build up all this inventory of knowledge through your scouting, and then analyze that, and then figure out when is going to be the best time and the best place to actually go in and try to go after an animal.
Both the apps are good, but not perfect for the UK situation. Tristan explains how his team have adapted MyHunt to become MyFieldsports. And just to make it clear, the app has nothing to do with our own Field Sports channel. They have mainly done it by putting in functionality for pheasant shoots, but Tristan says the app is also useful for wildfowlers and other kinds of shooter.
Shooting foxes and pest control and general stalking is much more closely related to the sort of continental style of hunting, as they call it. And this is sort of the initial way the app was thought about. I mean, then we sort of got into driven shoots and developed that feature, which first went live in December, so a couple months ago, and we are still working on developing this further. But the main area is to be able to record your you're out in the field pigeon shooting or fox shooting or pest control, and to be able to record your numbers and your sightings, and where you have problem areas, and where there is damage recorded, and where you find animals on your area. This is we are working to adapt it to every possible style of shooting.
Within Huntstand, you can share your location with your friends that you add in there. So at any given time, if let's say you got 12 different people who are on a pheasant drive, you can go in, make sure all those people are connected through the app, and then you can see in real time where they are on the map in relation to you. And it's all GPS based. So for that matter, with our offline mapping capabilities, your phone's GPS operates independently of cellular service. So if you go in and you save an offline map in Huntstand, you're still going to be able to use it to see the map and navigate with your GPS. So you'll see your real-time location, and you don't need cell service to do it.
So let's have a look at how that works. App versus app. My local shoot has a good last drive, which I can record on MyFieldsports on the left with pheasants shot. The map in both cases is provided by Google. Huntstand has a much wider range of map types you can use, while MyFieldsports has just variations on Google Maps. The closest that Huntstand on the right has to a pheasant is a duck or a rabbit. I can mark out the drive on both apps, and I can use a customization tool on both of them to place the pegs. I can also share the drive on both of them to other shooters, which in a pheasant shooting situation may only be useful if I've lost the power of speech. But I did go on a shoot once where we were given ordnance survey maps at the start of the day and precise times we had to be either standing on or beating through areas marked on those maps. The idea being there would be guns waiting if you were beating and beaters beating if you were standing. It was a shambles, and needless to say it was organised by army officers, but we all enjoyed it immensely. Next, I want to mark how we pushed through our local snipe more. Both apps allow me to draw a path. Neither has a symbol for a snipe. MyFieldsports has a range of small birds or a duck. Huntstand has a duck. And finally, I want to show where I saw a buck locally. Both apps do that, and both apps allow me to see my complete hunting area with my wildlife marked on it. Huntstand has more functionality when it comes to trail cams, allowing you to upload trail cam pictures to your own server space and organise them so you can see wildlife activity more easily. It even claims automatic animal tagging through image recognition, though for Europe it will have to get over its obsession with marking all deer as whitetails. Now, let's say I record my sighting of an exceptional buck. What's to stop that info making its way out of the app onto Facebook and into the hands of an unscrupulous hunting guide?
The way that our back-end infrastructure was developed and is maintained, every user's data is secure. So the only way that you're going to be able to share information about any of your hunting areas or any of your hunting data is by doing it selectively. And so when you go into Huntstand, whether you're hunting public land or private land, doesn't matter the size, you create a hunt area. So let's say you're hunting an individual property, you'll go in, you'll create that as your hunt area, and then within that you can save all your different map markers and all your data and scouting observations and that sort of thing. And then if you want to, you can make it a group hunt area. So if you're collaborating with multiple hunters on the same tract of property, you can give them access to it so that they can either just see it and view it to navigate and get around, or you can actually give them a level of access that allows them to contribute information into that hunt area. So it really works well for, in the United States, we have a lot of hunting clubs. So that's where, there might be 20, 30 members of a hunting club, and all these different folks hunt on one property. It can become kind of difficult to manage all those different people, but this makes it a lot easier.
Obviously, for anybody shooting or stalking, you don't want to give away any information. You don't want to let anybody else know where you shot your prize stag. But so we have had from the start a very clear and very secure data privacy policy in place, which a team of lawyers worked on very detailed. We have a very secure and very safe server, and all the information that's recorded is only used by us for internal analysis and to improve the app. The data is always very secure, and it will never be shared with anybody unless you personally choose to share it with your guests, your family, your estate workers, anybody in your syndicate that you might want to share it with. This information is completely private and completely secure. All the images, all the data, everything will never be shared. However, we are currently working with a lot of the associations and scientific organizations which are pro field sports in terms of research and analytics. But for this, there will be the user will always have to give their specific consent to share that data, and it will only be transferred to an association when it is in a very anonymized form and where the exact location is never given away. But of course, for research analysis and statistics, it is very useful. It is a very useful tool, especially when it comes to invasive species and diseases, to be able to establish also as a sort of protection and insurance policy for hunting. It's a very useful tool to be able to gather this data in an anonymized and safe form, to be able to protect our sport for the future. It's being able to estimate the population, but also the health of the population by recording the age and the weight. So you're able to estimate the population density together with recording the other species of songbird on the area, or turtle dove, or to be able to have an accurate image of the geese population, for example, and migratory birds throughout Europe. These are all sort of factors which can illustrate the health of an area and the biodiversity, which can then be analyzed and used together with harvest data to sort of show the amazing benefit which shooting has for conservation. We are still in the initial stages of developing this research part of the app. This is all still to come in the next few months. But we estimate and are working together with several well-known partners in Europe and in the UK to make this a very useful tool for the future of the field sports industry and shooting in general.
The only thing that we work with on that level for actual game management and working with biologists and state agencies is, for instance, let's say you wanted to run a trail camera survey or some sort of observation survey, which we do a lot over here. So a state government over here might ask its hunters and citizens to submit a survey at the end of the year that just says, hey, how many deer did you see? How many were bucks? How many were does? How many were fawns? How many did you harvest? That sort of thing. Well, right now, for the most part, that's done manually, and it's done through mail-in forms, which is kind of the archaic way of doing things. So we have the ability to work with those agencies so that they can get everybody wired into Huntstand and utilize our app to collect that data in a much easier way. And it's going to be more complete data, because if people are logging throughout the course of a year versus trying to just go back and remember everything they saw at the end of the year, you're going to get way more accurate numbers.
We're in talks with all the major hunting organizations. We're partnered with FACE in Europe, that represents many of the European organizations, including many of the UK ones in the European Parliament for hunting interest throughout Europe. And we're working together and establishing close partnerships with a lot of the national associations to be able to adapt this feature to the local area. And in the UK, for example, all the data will be anonymized on a county basis, and you'll be able to assist projects specifically. For example, the wing collection from certain geese and duck species, to be able to establish an accurate picture of the population for certain associations, or to do a birdsong survey, or any other type of research that you can imagine. But this is always going to be on a voluntary basis, where people can give expressed permission that my data can be used for this purpose, that what I record when I'm out in the field, I want this to benefit research and show the benefit that my activities have on conservation, but only ever be with express consent. And we are currently in the initial stages still of developing this concept together with the associations, and which will be further developed into close partnerships in other areas, and including sort of membership information and special offers as well, to encourage people to help the associations in their research and to protect the future of our sport, really.
Now, you may think that Huntstand, being American, is all about public land hunting. That's not true.
Public land hunting is extremely, extremely popular in the United States, but there is still, I don't know what the percentage is, but there is still a massive percentage that is private ground. Even here in Minnesota, my family has a farm, and there's still a lot of farms. They're generally smaller parcels in this part of the country. So you're looking at like 80-acre type size properties. And then as you get out west, more into the mountains, that's when the public land becomes more prominent. And just in general, the private properties are usually bigger, and the public land is usually bigger. So as you go west, everything's bigger in the west, but there's also a lot less people. So on the east, it's really whitetail focused, smaller properties, smaller tracts of public land. But at the same time, it's primarily whitetails in the east, and so you don't need a lot of ground to hunt whitetails. If you're talking about the west with elk and mule deer and those creatures that really require a huge landscape to survive, that's where things get a lot bigger. So when it comes to mapping and utilizing Huntstand on private ground, I hunt a lot of private ground myself. I hunt private and public, but quite a few places I hunt are private, and I have all of those properties mapped out to every detail. And what's nice about that in terms of hunting private ground, in my opinion, you're able to, the less pressured any property is, which means, you're hunting on private ground, it's always going to be less pressure than public ground. Less pressure equals more natural animal habits and movements. So you're able to observe and hunt those animals in more of a natural state versus when they're being chased all over the place by a mob of people. So Huntstand is really useful for mapping out private properties because you don't have a lot of the impact of so many people running around and changing things all the time. Where you can draw boundaries kind of with like a tool that we have in there that allows you to do it freehand. In the United States and even in Canada, we have all of our property boundaries identified. So we have that added benefit that you can go into the app, you can put on the property info layer, and it automatically shows all the boundaries. And then all you have to do is just tap, and you can actually save the boundary. So it's a little bit easier over here, but hopefully with time we'll be able to expand and make it easier for you guys as well.
Next question, what are they going to cost you? The apps are both freemium. You can get a free version and a premium or pro version, and both apps carry ads. Huntstand is less than half the price of MyFieldsports, but don't let that put you off.
80% of the features are always going to be free. 80% of the basic functionality will always be free for users. So everything from your general estate management to running a live shoot to the diary and the magazine, which has lots of local and regional information from various partners, including FieldSports channel since recently. Those sort of basic functions, which are useful for every hunter and shooter, are always going to be free. Then we have for keen shots, we have the pro subscription, which adds a large amount of extra functionality. So you're able to, have custom points of interest and be able to book and reserve high seats together with your team or other members of your shoot, and be able to, manage it in much greater detail and be able to export reports from your own activities and statistics. And also these features will continue to be expanded over the next few months, including hardware integration such as GPS trackers and your trail cameras, that you're able to have a live view. Those sorts of extra added benefit features for very keen sportsmen are currently being expanded, and it's around I think in the UK it's around £60 a year, or you can also do a free trial or subscribe on a monthly basis. But the 80% will always be free just for the field sports community, so everyone can have a benefit from it.
Our revenue model is twofold. So we've got a free version of our app that's supported by advertising and sponsorship for our industry partners, manufacturers, in some cases, hunting outfitters, anybody in the industry who wants to promote a product or service, they can advertise to our audience. In exchange, our audience can get a lot of the features of our app for free and use the app without having to pay anything. On the flip side, we have Huntstand Pro, which is a subscription. It's an annual subscription. It's $29.99 a year, and that gives you full access to all the features of the app. And in America, when it comes to competition in the app world, there are a handful of competitors. And right now we have, I can say this with total confidence and honesty, we have the biggest feature set at the lowest cost. Our next biggest competitor, for instance, it costs $30 per state per year, or $100 for the entire country. So we are approximately only 30% of the price for the entire country. And we offer actually more features than they do. So we really pride ourselves in that. It's in terms of business development, it's always a risk coming in at a lower cost because you have to make your money back. It costs a lot of money to develop and service and maintain an app, but we've been able to do that just because we've had such a great, big, loyal fan base and user base.
Advertising in a very, very limited fashion. We do it in the UK currently, not at all. This has always been a policy from the founders as well, who are very keen on providing a general benefit to the field sports community and not overloading people with annoying pop-up ads and the more sort of in-your-face type advertising. When we do advertising, for example, in Germany, we're partnered with one of the larger retailers there, and what we do, and also with several of the larger car companies and insurers, we do very targeted, very personalized advertising, which is useful to the community. So it's you will never be overrun with these annoying ads which get in the way of your actually using the app. So it's when you get advertising, it's very targeted to your style of shooting, to whether you are shooting or stalking or and what is actually useful equipment for you. And you might get a little note that at a certain point you might consider upgrading your scope to a current new model, but overall it is a very subtle way. We know we don't want to overload our users with annoying advertisement. That's company policy.
Both apps are looking beyond their borders to provide a better service to hunters around the world.
Because obviously every country has their own traditions, their own culture, and their own priorities of what's important for their particular style of shooting. So for us, we are always constantly examining every market and relying a lot on user feedback and people telling us what is actually useful for them. But I mean, the basic processes are everywhere the same. Sort of the planning, the execution, and the follow-up, the safety features during a shoot, that you're able to see the other guns, and where you can safely shoot based on the other gun's location and based on the beach's location as well, to sort of avoid any nasty accidents. Those are sort of the core aspects to improve your organization, your safety, and your follow-up activities, as well as creating a benefit for the community. Overall, this is, as I said before, the digitalization in these areas have run far behind. There's, in the app market in general, there's a few other smaller national apps, but nothing really adaptable to each local market, and especially for the UK, there's nothing really suitable on the market at the moment. And the idea is to develop something universal but locally adaptable, and that benefits the entire shooting and stalking community. Obviously, we're much more organized on the UK and continental type of private land and private areas or sort of syndicate areas, but the public land type of shooting, which is also prevalent in some parts of Europe, but especially in the US and Australia. We've recently launched more features in this regard, so that you're able to have your points of interest and your shooting activities on the world map and in specific defined areas and parks where shooting is permitted. And we're also working to expand this a lot, and especially next year, this will be a huge part of our activities to expand much more into the US and other areas.
We really do need to make a huge footprint in the US and Canada before we move on, just because it's our core market. There's the highest density of hunters, and frankly, competitively, we need to do that so that we don't get outpaced. And as you know, and I'm sure as many of your folks in your audience know, it's a marketing battle. So there's marketing dollars are finite. We don't just have infinite money to throw around to get the word out there about our app. So it's very important for us to focus on that core market before we expand. And when we look at our data through all of our analytics and tracking, and we can see where people are using it throughout the rest of the world, we know that outside of North America, there's a lot of room for growth. So we definitely want to get there, but it's going to take some time. And, like you said, folks are already using the app. It's not, we might not necessarily be speaking the same language on certain things, and there might not be like certain applicable species that make sense in North America versus in Europe or anywhere in the world. But folks are still figuring out how to use this in a meaningful way. And that's before we even have designed anything to cater to those other audiences. So I think once we do that, it's going to be a big win for us in Europe and Australia and even in Africa and anywhere where there's still a reasonable amount of hunting going on.
The conclusion is both have their place. We have had gamebook apps in the UK in the past, and some of them are still lying neglected in the various app stores. We are now over those. Both of these apps are a good start. As a European with European wildlife, I feel more affinity with MyFieldsports. I feel it is making more of an effort with UK shooters, but Huntstand has more functionality and is cheaper. Ollie agrees with me that when he was looking for a hunting app, he could not find much between them.
There was two apps that were very similar, almost identical looking on the actual store itself, and there was MyFieldsports and the Huntstand, and I was recommended Huntstand on a Facebook forum, so I used that, and yeah, I mean, but as far as I'm aware, they're identical, so I hope they're sister companies, otherwise someone's copying someone, so.
Thanks, Ollie. Now, when I say they are a good start, I would like both to be more in tune with the wider web. Please can they sync with Google Fit and Apple Fit? I would like them to be less up themselves. There's something a bit clinical and self-obsessed about the web. I'd like them to alter the language they use so they are more fun to use. And I still feel that neither of them have that killer function. Apps generally thrive because they have a large enough mass of people using them, like YouTube, Facebook or Twitter, or because they have a function you feel you can't live without, like Google Maps. I want both Huntstand and MyFieldsports to aim to be either big or beautiful, or both.